So in this problem we have Raj read 25 pages of a book containing 100 pages. So a book contains 100 pages, and Raj, Raj has read 25 pages of that book. So out of 100, out of 100 pages, 25 pages read by Raj. Then what fraction actually he read? So total 100 pages, 25 pages read. Fraction of pages read. Fraction of pages read, or fraction of book read, whatever you want to say. So since the total number of pages are 100, that is, a book has 100 equal parts, you can imagine in that way. 100. Raj has read 25 pages, so this is the fraction actually Raj read. Now, Rita read 2 by 5 or 2/5. You can read it as 2/5 or 2 by 5, right? 2/5 of the same book. Who read less? Now for Rita, it has already been given what fraction actually she read. So she read 2 by 5 or 2/5. In this case, it's 25 by 100. In this case, 2 by 5. Who read less? Now it means clearly who read less, who read more. Did they read equal number of pages? In all such cases, okay, what you have to do is you actually have to compare the fraction, because only that will tell you that who read more number of pages. So in this case, it's already in 2 by 5, and you can see that it's in the simplest form, right? We can compare it even, simply by like if I say this fraction, it's 25 by 100. I look at this fraction, it is 2 by 5. Then I can say that, hey, it is an unlike fraction, and let's proceed with the normal way of solving that. Find the LCM, then find an equivalent fraction and all, as we have seen in earlier videos. But if you can look at this fraction, one thing we can do, and that will save our time and will save our little effort, and that is, you can clearly see that we can simplify this fraction. How? If you look at 25, then you can see that 25 is actually a divisor of 100, right? If you remember, when we want to simplify any fraction, we always try to find out the highest common factor of the numerator and the denominator. And you know that if out of numerator or denominator of any two numbers, let's say A or B, if any of these two numbers is actually the divisor of the other, let's say that A is divisor of B. In that case, if you will find the highest common factor, then of course, simple mathematics, you will say that highest common factor in that case will be A. Similarly, if I look at this fraction, 25 is divisor of 100. Therefore, the highest common factor of 25 by 100 is actually 25. And if I simplify this, then what I have to do is I have to divide 25 numerator and denominator by 25. So if I divide numerator and denominator by 25, I'll get 1 by 4. Well, how? Divide 25 by 25, you'll get 1. Divide 100 by 25, you'll get 4. So now you can clearly see that, hey, it's much simpler, right? We have simplified our fraction. Now it's much easier to compare these two fractions. I'll repeat again. You could have proceeded with this fraction also, but it would take much time, and it will increase the number of steps in our calculation. Now we have two fractions. We have 1 by 4 and we have 2 by 5. We can take two different ways to compare these two fractions, and I'll discuss both of them. If we look at this fraction, right? If you look at this fraction, the first thing you'll see that say that, hey, these two fractions are actually unlike fractions. Even in this case, they have unequal, the numerators are not the same. Their numerators are not the same. Okay, so two ways go from here. Two ways go from here. The one way is that find the LCM of 4 and 5 so that you can find the equivalent fractions of this fraction and this fraction having the denominator the same, that is the LCM, and then you can compare. How? Let's see. This is the second step that I'll say. So if I find the LCM of 4 and 5, if you solve the try to find the LCM of 4 and 5, you'll get LCM as what? 20. How? It's homework for you. Okay? You just try to find out the LCM of 4 and 5 and you'll get 20. So if I have to convert this fraction into an equivalent fraction having its denominator as 20, by what number I'll multiply the denominator that I'll get 20? You'll get, if you multiply 4 by 5, you'll get 20. Now since I have multiplied my denominator by 5, I'll also multiply my numerator by 5 so that I get an equivalent fraction. Okay, so this is 5 by 20. Now by what number I'll multiply 5 to get its denominator as 20? You will say multiply 5 by 4, you'll get your denominator as 20. Now since you have multiplied the denominator with by 5 by 4, you'll multiply your numerator also by 4, and so that you can get equivalent fraction. Now this is 5 by 20 and this is 8 by 20. Now you can clearly see that if you look at these two fractions are now like fractions. Since these two fractions are now like fractions, what you can do is you can now compare the numerators. If you compare the numerators, the numerator in this case is 5, in this case is 8. 5 is of course less than 8, therefore this is the greater fraction. Since this fraction is for this one, this particular fraction, that's the equivalent fraction for 2 by 5 is 8 by 20. Therefore we will say that Rita read more. Okay, this fraction is greater. Now there's a first way to compare, another way to compare that I'll discuss here. If you look at these two unlike fractions, can you see that we can very easily make the numerators the same? How? You just have to write the equivalent fraction of this particular fraction having its numerator as 2. And how you'll make the numerator as 2? Simply multiply 1 with 2, you'll get 2. Now since you have multiplied numerator with 2, you have to also multiply the denominator with 2 so that you can get an equivalent fraction. So if you multiply the denominator with 2, you'll get the denominator as 8, and here you have 2 by 5, right? Now it's again an unlike fraction, but here this is the first category of unlike fraction. If you remember, we had discussed this one also, when you have the numerator as the same. In these two unlike fractions, you have their numerator the same, and when numerator is same, what you do, you compare their denominator, and the fraction having the smaller denominator is actually a greater or the larger fraction. So in this case 5 is less than 8. Since these two fractions are unlike fractions and this particular fraction has its denominator as the smallest one out of these two, therefore this fraction is actually greater than this fraction. So again, by this way also you can see that Rita read more number of pages, that if it has larger fraction, greater fraction in comparison to the Raj's fraction. So the reason I discuss these two ways is to just tell you that this can be another way to compare the fractions. Like if your fraction is unlike fraction, then in that case you can quickly compare it if you just look at the numerators and the denominators very properly, and then you can decide either I can follow this one, or should I follow this one or this one? Which one will be faster?